Hello class, in this video I'll be discussing surfaces and level curves. Let's begin. The graph of a function of two variables, z is equal to f of xy, is called a surface. And in this diagram, I'm highlighting this figure because this figure is called a surface. It's called a surface because it's the graph of z is equal to f of xy. In previous videos, you graphed planes, and planes are called surfaces because they are the graphs of ax plus by plus cz is equal to d. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut these surfaces by a plane and create traces. And what is a trace? A trace is the curve that results when a surface is cut by a plane. And there are three types of traces. The first one is the xy trace. And the xy trace is the intersection of the surface with the xy plane, or where z is equal to 0. Next is the yz trace. And the yz trace is the intersection of the surface with the yz plane, or in this case, x is equal to 0. And finally, there is the xz trace, and the xz trace is the intersection of the surface with the xz plane, or where y is equal to 0. Now I've gone ahead and I've drawn a plane in the XYZ grid, and I'm going to identify all three traces, starting with the XY trace. This green line is called the XY trace because that's where the surface intersects the XY plane. This blue line is the YZ trace, and we call that the YZ trace because that's where the surface intersects the YZ plane. And finally, this red line is the XZ trace because that is where the surface intersects with the XZ plane. Now, the traces that we're going to focus on are the ones in the XY trace. And when we have curves in the XY trace, we call them level curves. So what we're going to do is we're going to let z equal f of xy. Level curves are formed when z is equal to f of xy is equal to k, where k is a constant. These types of curves lie in the xy plane. Okay, to be able to graph level curves, assign a value for z and solve for y. The resulting function will produce the level curve for that value of c, and then repeat the process to find multiple level curves. So here is an example of a cone. A cone has the formula z is equal to x squared plus y squared. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose values of z and graph the result on the xy plane. Okay, so let's start with z is equal to 0. If z is equal to 0, then that means that 0 is equal to x squared plus y squared. That is this purple dot that I placed on the XYZ grid. So if x squared plus y squared is equal to 0, it follows that x is equal to 0 and y is equal to 0. So that is the coordinate 0, 0. So in the xy plane, I'm going to put a coordinate at the origin. And that is the first level curve. Next, I'm going to let z equal 1. So now that's 1 is equal to x squared plus y squared. Now, we could go ahead and solve this equation for y and graph the results. However, this is the equation of a circle whose radius is 1. So this is a circle with radius 1. So if we took this cone and cut it horizontally, where z is equal to 1, the result would be a circle whose radius is 1. Okay, so let's now assume that z is equal to 9. So now we have 9 is equal to x squared plus y squared, and that is a circle with radius 3. So if we were to cut this cone horizontally, where z is equal to 9, that would be a circle whose radius is 3. And as the value of z increases, so let's say we went to, I don't know, 16, that would be a circle of radius 4. And the level curves would just get larger and larger and larger. So the circular level curves would just get larger and larger and larger.